Right, hello everybody. On Monday, I think it was, I gave you a past mock question on seasoning and I asked you to revise it and I asked you to go through it. And I just want to go through the answer with you here for today and let you do your own revision then after that. So just to see, did you miss anything or was there anything you didn't understand or so on. So first of all, the question we were given, as I said, was seasoning, wood seasoning. And just to read through it and just to see, well, what is required. Actually, before I start that, sorry, I need to just mention it's a mock exam paper. It is a higher level. It's not the most difficult of questions, mind you, that was given there. So you might be asked a little bit more, to be honest, in your own exam. But anyway, we'll work through it. So question 3 tends to be either seasoning or conversion, or maybe something in relation to trees or tree types or tree structure. So in this case, it's wood seasoning, and it's quite likely that it may come up again this year because it comes up quite often. Wood is generally seasoned before use in order to reduce its moisture content, and the diagram shows one method of seasoning wood. Okay, a little bit about this before we go any further, and that is just to go back over and revise. Well, what does seasoned mean? It means dried. All wood needs to be dried before we can use it. It's no good to us wet. While it's wet, just to remind you as well, it's called green timber. So timber freshly cut or freshly felled is called green timber. So what is the correct name then for what are we actually asked? It says that the diagram shows one method of seasoning wood. Okay, and part 1 asks what is the correct name for this method of seasoning. Then we're asked to state the function, and they've the word function highlighted in bold, and it's of each of these 5 items down here: the fan, the steam jets, the heating coils, the vents, and the trolley. And we're asked to state the function. So what does it mean by function, really? Well, what does it do? Okay. Oh God, my writing's terrible. Hang on, let me fix this. What do they do? Your function is to be a student, to learn, hopefully. Okay, so they asked us what the function was. And the ones they listed out were the fan, the steam jets, heating coils, vents, and trolley. And yes, they did give us a diagram, which does make it a bit easier. Then you were asked to name one other method. So one other method, there is really only one other method. Well, there's 2 versions of kiln seasoning, I suppose, so you could say that. But one other method of seasoning, and we're asked to give 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages, something we're used to giving for nearly every topic. Bear in mind, 2 advantages, 2 disadvantages, that's 4 different items. And it's for this second method, not for the method that's given there. And then it says when wood is used in external situations, it's normally treated with a preservative. Okay, preservative. State 2 reasons, so give reasons why. Why is this done? For use of preservatives, and also name 2 classes of preservative. So the word classes in there really means types. Okay, so there we go. So that's the question broke down. So I started off, and just in terms of layout, and yes, I've done this question as if it was a question on your exam paper in terms of the layout on the page and so on. So I wrote down, first of all, what it was they asked us, and I wrote it every time. So it's not quite the same thing as rewriting the question. Okay, it's just writing for yourself to remind yourself and to hint at yourself what it is you're actually being asked. So my heading was seasoning, and the first thing they asked me was, what is the correct name for this type of drying? So the answer in that case was kiln seasoning. Okay, so that was fair enough. You could have said compartment kiln seasoning as well, or progressive kiln seasoning, or yeah, no, that's kind of it really there with that one. Then the next thing that they asked us was for the function of each part, what they did. Now I redrew my diagram, not necessarily because it would be needed in the exam, but actually to kind of go over a few bits with you again. So just to add a little bit of information to your own questions and so on. So the function of each part, first thing we're asked was for the fan. And they said, well, what's the fan about? Well, the fan, and this is the important bit, is needed to keep the air circulating around the stack. Okay, so in terms of keywords there, right, what are the keywords that they're looking for within your question in order to try and give you full marks? Circulating is it, lads? Circulating. Okay, so that's a key word, and that's what describes how the fan works. It keeps the air circulating around the stack. Stack is a key word there as well. If you said around the timber, you wouldn't be wrong, but stack is a correct terminology, and that's what it's all about. Giving those examiners the right terminology, the right words, the right phrases to basically say to them, look, give me the marks, I know this stuff. Then we were asked what were the steam jets for. So let's just go back and have a look now at our diagram. Or fans, first of all, and I didn't look at that a second ago. I should have looked at it. If you look at it, it's in the middle of the thing. What does a fan normally do? Well, it circulates or twists or whatever. It does something. In our actual diagram, did they call them circulating fans? They did. Look, they gave you the answer, lads. Circulating fans. But anyway, so that's where they are. That's fine. And the other thing then they asked about was steam jets. Now, steam jets does what it says in the tin. Jets of steam come out of the jets. So all we have to say is why that happens. So what does a steam jet do? It keeps the wood and the kiln moist and warm. Okay, so keywords in that case, moist and warm. And it stops it drying too fast. Key phrase there. We don't want it to dry too fast. Okay, so anything that's highlighted in green, I'll put it down here actually, is a keyword. Okay. That really, and what that means is you need to have those phrases or those words inside in your answer in order to try and get full marks. Okay. Now, next one was the heating coils. Let's look at where they are. Well, again, it is what it says in the tin. It heats, and they are coils. So what are they for? Why? Because it's what, not what they are, what they're for. They heat up the kiln to help begin the drying process. Okay, so that's all it is. It's like the fan in your oven. Okay, heats it up to cook cakes and so on. In terms of keywords there, the drying process, I suppose, will be important. Next page then, the vents, and they're at the top of the kiln, and I suppose it makes sense, or at least I hope it makes sense to you. A vent is required to allow fresh air in and the wet air out, and it helps regulate the relative humidity. So keyword there, regulate, keep it even. Relative humidity, keyword. If you don't know what relative humidity is, you need to go back and check that. We've gone through it enough times in class. It's where it's the amount of moisture in the air versus the amount of moisture the air could hold. What the vents do, they're allowing fresh air in and wet air out. Okay, and that's what a vent is for, so in and out. The trolley itself, the wood is stacked on a trolley which is portable, and that's wheeled in and out of the kiln where the drying takes place. So stacked is a key word there. That's what the trolley's for. It's a portable unit or a movable unit, and that's wheeled in and out, and that's where the drying takes place. All right, so there's my diagram for kiln seasoning. Now I added in a few extra little bits to this just to kind of revise it with you. First thing over here, this is a timber stack. What's the timber stack purpose? Well, it allows air to pass through the stack. Actually, the timber stack isn't to allow air to pass through. Well, it kind of is, I suppose. The timber is stacked in such a way as to allow air to pass through. Yeah, that's probably what I should have written there. Timber stacked to allow air to pass through. Okay, I might change that before I print it out. I won't change it now. The other thing I added to it is over here, the stickers. Stickers are the timbers that are in between the actual planks that you are seasoning, and their job or their purpose is to allow air to flow, and they're usually about 25 millimeters thick. Why 25 millimeters? Because traditionally that would have been about an inch. Okay, so about an inch thick. And then the kiln itself has insulated walls, just like you're open at home. And the reason being, it saves the money by keeping in the heat. Okay, so they don't want to lose heat when this process is going on. All right. Part 3 then asks us for, or to name or label one other method of seasoning, and that is air seasoning. And then it said to give 2 advantages. I wrote down that it was cheap because it's low tech and there's no special equipment needed. That's a huge advantage. Anybody can do it. So therefore, there's my second reason. because it's a low energy method and it doesn't use electricity and anybody can do it, that is another advantage. Whether you count that as one or two, I don't know, but I'm going to get full marks for that question there because that is the answer. Two disadvantages. One is that it can be quite slow. Okay, so it is a very slow way of drying timber because you are weather dependent. You're waiting to see what kind of weather is outside, and in Ireland in particular, we've quite wet weather, so it isn't necessarily the most appropriate method for Ireland. However, it is also a disadvantage because not only is it weather dependent, but generally it'll only reach about 18 to 20% moisture content um, because of the humidity of the outside air. And in Ireland, we tend to live in we do live in a pretty humid country. Now, there is a keyword in there, and that is reseasoned. So a lot of the time, if you're going to build something out of air seasoned wood, you need to bring it into the place or the location that you're going to use that timber, and you need to reseason it. In other words, let it come to the same level, I suppose, as the room itself. So let it season to the same moisture content as the room itself. Now, part 4 of the question asks us for 2 reasons why we use preservative. So this is slightly different from our seasoning. First of all, what is preservative? Preservative is something you apply to timber in order to protect it and to make it last longer and live longer. And that's what it is. So reasons why we use it then, well, exactly that. It protects the wood, it protects the wood from rotting, okay, especially if it's outside or in contact with the ground. So in terms of keyword there, rotting is a key. Oh, wrong button. Rotting is a keyword, and you are protecting the wood from rotting. Why is outside or in contact with the ground such a big issue? Because that's where they get moisture from. Rain and the ground, the water table, the ground tends to be moist or wet. Why else would you use preservative? Well, it also protects the wood from insect attack and fungi. Or fungi, I don't know how to pronounce that, I never did. And fungi. Okay, so it protects that wood from insects and fungi, basically mushrooms, okay? Spores which grow on the tree and cause issues. And then they asked us to list 2 classes of preservatives, in other words, 2 types. We said this a while ago. Tar oil preservative is your creosote type paint. It's what you put on a piece of timber in order to make it last longer. So it's tar oil based. You also have waterborne preservative, which basically means that the preservative is carried within the water. The water evaporates, leaves behind the preservative. And you have solvent-based preservative. Same story, only that instead of water, it's a solvent. And that concludes the mock question I gave you on seasoning. Check your copy. Make sure you haven't left anything out. In terms of the actual presentation of the question, make sure it's tidy, make sure it's easy to read, and get into the habit of writing out a question properly like that. You will be putting it onto A4 line sheets in the exam. You need to be ready to do that tidily, accurately, and evenly, and in such a way that you don't forget part of the question. So even if that means going through the question and highlighting exactly what it is you're being asked, then you need to get into the habit of doing that. All right, guys. Okay, thank you for watching.